Now, if you're considering the new Xiaomi Pad 8, you might also be looking at the regular iPad 11, but which is the better option right now? Well, let's talk about it. Pricing between these two is kind of strange to say, but the iPad is actually cheaper, starting at $349, and I've already seen it go for quite a bit less, where the Xiaomi Pad may cost up to $100 more, depending which country you're from. Both of these start with 128 gigabytes of storage, but the iPad has 6 gigabytes of RAM versus 8 gigabytes for the Xiaomi Pad. You can even go up to 12 gigabytes of RAM with the 256 gigabyte version of the Xiaomi Pad 8. The iPad is a little bit lighter at 477 grams versus 485 for the Xiaomi Pad 8. But then the Xiaomi Pad is a tad thinner, except of course the big camera module there on the back, which actually makes the tablet lay at an angle, and it rocks back and forth a little bit as well, where the iPad just lays flat. As far as the displays, both tablets have an IPS LCD display, a slightly larger 11.2 inch with the Xiaomi Pad versus 11 inches for the iPad. You've also got a higher refresh rate at 144 Hz on the Xiaomi Pad 8 versus 60 Hz on the iPad 11. The Xiaomi Pad is also brighter overall and has a higher resolution at 2136 by 3200 versus 1640 by 2360. You can see the iPad is just a little bit taller, pretty similar aspect ratio though. You'll also notice the bezels are a little bit smaller on the Xiaomi Pad 8. You've also got a little better viewing angles as well. I think both of these look pretty good in person, but when you put them next to each other, the Xiaomi Pad definitely has better screen quality. Battery life on these two are actually closer than you would think, considering the Xiaomi Pad 8 now has a larger battery than the previous version. But when I ran my typical battery drain test on both of these at 100% screen brightness, the iPad lasted 5.5 hours versus 6 hours on the Xiaomi Pad 8. I guess that sort of makes sense though, considering the Xiaomi Pad has a brighter display. Once you turn that down, it should last quite a bit longer. You've also got 45 watt fast charging on the Xiaomi Pad versus only 20 to 28 watts on the iPad 11. Obviously, one difference between these two is going to be the software, although you can see the Xiaomi Pad does have some iPad styling to it, so it is going to make some things look pretty similar, even though the Xiaomi Pad is on Android 16 versus iPadOS 18 on the iPad 11. You can see the icons look similar. You've got a dock down at the bottom. Shortcuts up in the right hand corner, again, look very similar. One advantage with the iPad is you've got a fingerprint scanner right on the power button, where you don't get any fingerprint scanner on the Xiaomi Pad 8. You've also got things like Workstation on the Xiaomi Pad 8 versus Stage Manager on the iPad, so sort of personal preference, but there's plenty of ways to be more productive, like floating windows and split screen, to do multitasking on both of these tablets. They also both have video out, so you can use an HDMI adapter to connect to a projector, TV, or external monitor. You've also got pen or pencil support on both of these as well. I feel like the Apple Pencil is really nice for drawing, taking notes, or just moving around the software and that kind of stuff. I don't actually have the Xiaomi Focus Pen to test on here, unfortunately, but the Xiaomi Pad also gets 4 years of software updates and 6 years of security updates. You usually get at least 5 to 6 years of software updates on iPads, so they're going to be fairly comparable when it comes to software support. Performance-wise, you've got the A16 Bionic chip versus Snapdragon 8S Gen 4 processor in the Xiaomi Pad 8. They both are actually pretty comparable. The Xiaomi Pad 8 is built for multi-core power and higher refresh rate tasks, and the iPad 11 is going to be the leader in single-core efficiency and app-specific optimization. So you can see just by the benchmark results, you can see the iPad's a little better in single-core score, where the Xiaomi Pad 8 is a little higher in multi-core score. So I feel like these two are going to be pretty comparable when it comes to performance. The 144 Hz refresh rate may help with some games on the Xiaomi Pad 8, but just keep in mind the iPad often benefits from better game optimization, so it may depend on which games you're playing. Overall, you really can't go wrong with either one when it comes to performance. One advantage for the Xiaomi Pad 8 is it has a quad speaker setup, and sure, you have that look on the iPad, but just keep in mind there's only one speaker on each side, the other one's just for looks. I do think the iPad sounds pretty good overall, but the Xiaomi Pad 8 is going to be a little bit louder, so kind of personal preference there. But here's a quick sample of each just to give you an idea of how they sound. As far as cameras go, these two are pretty decent compared to other tablets I've tested. Not quite as good as cell phones yet, but the iPad has a 12 megapixel wide angle lens on the back versus the 13 megapixel wide angle on the Xiaomi Pad 8. You also get a higher resolution front facing camera on the iPad with its 12 megapixel ultra wide versus 8 megapixel wide angle on the Xiaomi Pad 8. Nice thing is you can record up to 4K resolution for video recording on both of these, but here's a quick sample of each just to give you an idea of how they compare. I think both of these are fine for Zoom meetings, FaceTime, that kind of stuff. The iPad does have center stage on the front camera where it sort of tracks as you move. I feel like if you want the better screen quality for streaming and you want the faster charging, plus some extras like Workstation, I think it makes sense to go with the Xiaomi Pad 8. But if you want the longer software support, better video calling features, and already have other Apple products, it may make more sense to go with the iPad 11. If you like tablets, phones, and other tech, I've got a lot more comparisons that I'm working on, so you'll want to keep an eye out for those upcoming videos. So if you've made it this far into the video, you may want to say thanks by subscribing, and don't forget to give a thumbs up if this video was helpful. This is Brian from Fishbee Productions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.